Okay, great.
Here we
Excellent.
go.
Okay, perfect. All right, everybody. So, again, thank you for showing up tonight as I do these sort of sporadic webinars that I've done since the winter. And it's been, focused on the life of an artist. How to navigate a career, how to navigate specifically in the Boston area, but a lot of what we talked about can apply to just about anywhere. But that's what I really wanted to do because I feel like we we can share so much with each other. And I've been in this game for a while, and I thought, I have a few little bits of wisdom, and maybe somebody else would like to hear that, and
Watching it
other
under.
people might have
Yeah.
wisdom to share about this kind of um, you know way of life. And so that's how this all started. And who knows where this is going to go? I intend to keep doing these, on a sporadic
Great.
basis. I can't say every month or every other month. But anyway, I wanted to introduce to you Merill Comeau, a very good friend of mine who I've known now for almost 20 years. And we met through a court coaching group that Merrill began
Mhm.
something in the early 2000s. And at that time, for me, it was a very, well, it wasn't super unusual, but it was, something that was very appealing to me. And that was not the first coaching group that I've been in. It was the second. And, it is such a helpful thing. But it's very dependent on who's part of the group and what you're trying to set out to accomplish. But for especially women artists, I think we do well in sharing things with each other. I think there's a natural sort of cooperation that has been there that I've seen. I don't know if it was always there, but it certainly is now. So, without further ado, as they say, Meryl, I'm going to hand it over to you. And we brought you here because you have, especially in your career, been so generous to other artists and so generous in making opportunities and sharing opportunities, and getting things started, which is hard work. So let me
Yeah.
hand it over to you and tell us what all this collaboration and cooperation has been to you in your life.
Yeah. Hard getting started and hard to maintain,
Hard to maintain. Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, so when you asked me to talk about this, I started thinking about this in the larger context, really, of in the larger context in one way, and also in the very specific context of I use soft materials. Oh, somebody's talking in the background that's coming through. So
Oh, okay.
I
Can
will.
everybody mute themselves, please? And then we will definitely open up for questions later or do the chat. If you have questions, actually, or you have thoughts during this, in fact, please do use the chat. Um,
Yeah.
Everybody know where that is? Yeah, the little chat button. And we will look at that and send those questions on to Meryl. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So I was thinking both in terms of the sort of the wider world, but also I use soft materials, and there's quite a history of collaboration and groups in that area. And I really think of myself really in this long lineage of collaboration and cooperation. There, in I don't know if people know this, but in New England when it was colonized, there was a barter economy, and women would bring their looms to the green in the center of a town. Looms they didn't own themselves because only the men could own the equipment, but they would bring their looms to the center of town and they would weave all day, sometimes for the whole weekend, and they would kind of compete with each other, and it was a joyous event. And they would collect yardage, and that yardage was the payment to the minister. That was his salary. So there is this long history, certainly here in New England, of of collaborative, of working together in collaborative. And the other thing that occurred to me was very poignant for me to read about women who were in concentration camps in World War II, would write their names on a piece of cloth, and they would write other people's, for other people, they would write their names. And then women would embroider those names. And they were saying, I am here. I
Mm,
exist. I should be remembered. And I sort of think of that, in terms of just artist groups, that we are here. We have names, we have voices. And so that's sort of, that's part of my motivation. It's kind of a utopian idea on my part, really, and so I'm just constantly working at it because human beings are fallible and fragile and so forth. I will say, I used to be an interior designer, and so that's project-based work. So that's
mm,
certainly, introduced me to collaborating. But then I was working with youth. I was working with groups of about 20 to 25 freshmen in high school groups and their parents on spiritual quests for the Unitarian Universalist Church. And I met Clara Wainwright. Are there people in the room yeah. So Clara Wainwright, we couldn't afford to hire her to do a project, but she said, "Oh, come to my house for a potluck supper. I'm doing a project." And so I just showed up with a casserole or whatever. And that really taught me one way to approach forming groups. So when I met Adria, I had a potluck supper at my house. And
that's right.
yeah, I invited something like 16 people because not everyone's going to like take to your idea. But that's a great thing to know. Potluck supper is always great. Um, so I learned from Clara Wainwright, just do it. And then I worked with her on a big community project. So I really began as a community artist and working with community groups to help them take them through a series of exercises that would help them identify things about themselves, things they had in common, ways they were different. And that was great training for doing artist groups. So I would encourage you, if you ever do start an artist group, take a little bit of time to think about your utopian ideas of what you hope you get out of your group, but also how are you the same and how are you different? So how do you respect your differences, but how do you also form bonds because you have things in common? So
Right. Now, I was wondering if you think there's anything about your personality. Have you always been outgoing, and are you, someone who can easily talk to people, or do you think it's harder if you're a little shyer? Like, what do you think that takes?
that's a great conversation because I do not consider myself an extrovert. I'm only partially extroverted. And I was just talking to my family about this weekend that I was visiting, that when I was a teenager, I was a waitress. And when I was waitressing, I was able to talk to other people. And as soon as I stopped waitressing, I would find it really hard to talk to anyone that I didn't know or on the train or whatever. So I think it's something that's like a muscle that I have to work.
Mm,
That's one thing. Practice, practice, practice. Do it, do it, do it, and then it becomes
yeah.
easier. Um, and and also, I'm terrible at a cocktail party. Terrible. Like I have to have a job. So facilitating groups is a job.
Yeah.
Then I know what my role is. I know what I'm supposed to do. It's easy for me to stand up and, sort of lay out a plan or schedule or whatever. So, and I think maybe growing up in a big family,
Ah, okay.
I think that definitely, groups, we always were told you have to not do your share. You have to do your share and a half.
Ah,
So that's a
interesting.
great way to walk into group work is I'm not just going to do my share, I'm going to do my share and a half. So I really try to do that. And hopefully some of the people here have experienced that and feel I am honoring that.
So tell us how, okay, so take us to the coaching group. So you said that you switched careers, and for you it was a little rocky trying to figure out how to navigate the art world. And you
Yeah,
started asking,
yeah.
yeah.
I felt the same way when I first had children too, that there was a really steep learning curve. Or when I first went to college, I thought there was a really steep learning curve of how to deal with like living in a dorm or whatever. But so yes, I continued to do my design job while I was sort of slipping into the artwork, and I was getting more and more attached to doing the artwork. And so I knew I had to get up if I wanted to actually, support myself in any way. I would really have to do this, really pay attention to the business side of this. So I did do the Arts and Business Council of Boston used to run a program called Artist Toolbox. And I went to Artist Toolbox. I got into Artist Toolbox and every other time you met, you just met with a smaller peer group. And there was so much I learned like about where do you like print your business cards or, so you can get 1,000 for not a lot of money, like just little things. I didn't necessarily want to stay with that peer group that I was in, but I
Mhm.
wanted to do that kind of coaching. So, peer to peer coaching. So, Adria, that's when you heard from me
Yeah.
about doing this. And so we should explain, I think, Adria, that
Yeah.
we would meet once a month and we would bring
Yep.
a bag supper and we would, in the building, the artist building, had a studio and had like a kitchen and we would sit around that big kitchen table, all of us with our laptops and our lunch, our dinner. And we had topics for each month. And so we had LinkedIn was one of the topics. So
Right.
someone knew how to do LinkedIn, someone used LinkedIn. And so we all opened up our laptops and everyone figured out how to start an account at LinkedIn, how to log in, how you might use it, looked at other LinkedIn accounts. And that's just one example of the many things that coaching group met for like 7 years, I think.
Yes.
Um, so there's so many things that that you're someone else has written a proposal or someone else has gotten a gallery in New York or someone else, there's always something that you can learn from someone else.
Yeah, maybe another word for coaching group now is accountability group. I hear that term used more. I hardly ever hear coaching now. And I wonder if that's, that may be a little bit different, a little bit the same. But anyway, so for
Yeah.
those who are confused, I think it's basically we're talking about the same kind of thing where, you're holding other people and yourself accountable to something you say you're going to learn or something you're going to do. And something that's hard to do. So you go back to the group and say, guess what? I did it. Or, oops, I didn't do it. Oh, okay. Well, how about next month? So anyway, yeah, it can be very, very helpful in that way.
And I think there are a lot of different ways to get into an accountability group. I know that some of the groups I'm in have smaller groups that meet, and that could be a topic. I know that Surface Design Association has meetups. I may be doing an accountability group or some sort of group in the fall with Surface Design Association. I mean, I think there you can set one up yourself and have you and your colleagues can hold each other accountable. I think it's one of the things that pieces of advice I got was collect all the no's and the yeses for everything you apply to and celebrate, yay, you applied, even when you get a
Yes.
no as a group, in your accountability group and say yay when you get the yes. So yeah, that's something that can be done in an accountability group.
I mean, yeah, the art, not world, but, the art career can really be isolating and lonely and it has so many ups and downs that honestly, it's very important to have at least one other person who's going to be there for you, you know, to pick up the pieces and to remind you of all the things that you had accomplished. Yeah, it's one of those rougher, I think, career choices, to say the least.
Yes. I mean, I love being an artist. I think it's the most satisfying career I've had because I've done a couple other things before. And this uses my intellect, my body, my eyesight, my thinking, all, it has everything, my hands. It's really it's a lovely, lovely career. And I do love being alone. So, it's nice to have alone time in the studio. But I will say that there have been things that have developed in my career that are a direct result from being in an artist group. And so I could share a couple of
Yeah,
those.
please tell us. Yeah, what have you gotten out of it? Yeah.
So, I would say this is a small one, but I always felt I had to teach for an income. And Martha Wakefield, who is an abstract painter in this Boston area, and was in the coaching group, said to me, Merill, you should take a class every year. Don't just teach, take a class every year. And that was a such great permission to allow
Mm,
myself to like, to develop mastery in other mediums or just see how other people taught. And, so that I can actually visually see the impact of the class that I took right after she said that to me. I can see the impact visually in my work from something I
yeah.
took in that class. So I would say that. I just got back from the Biennale in Venice,
Yes.
and I've always wanted to go. And I have occasionally over the past 5 years or so participated in Crit Lab, which is an organization out of New York, Patricia Miranda out of New York, where you meet twice a month. Only once a month you show your work, but everybody in your small group talks about what they observe, and it's enormously educational for me to be in this group of people that are from all over the world actually, and what they see in the work and the ways that they're thinking. And you can share things like artist statements and other writing things as well. The great thing for me about, and the way it's really impacted me, Crit Lab, is there are all these other things that Patricia Miranda does, including every other year when the Biennale takes place, she brings a group of people to the Biennale and then follows that with, so for a week, and then follows that with a week residency. And that group is a group of people who have been in artist groups because they've come in through Crit Lab. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful group experience. And I got two ideas for two series for what I will do, not just from the Biennale, but from being in that group and talking about what we saw and the things outside of even the Biennale that we saw sparked. I definitely have two series that I want to pursue this year. So those things I think are really those are good examples. And actually, if you want, I'll just run through some of the other groups I'm in. Shall I do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, please. I was going to say we could, that would be good to do. Yeah, yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
So, because that's the other thing is that when you're in a group, if you're running a group, you're really responsible for it.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
so sometimes it's easier for me to facilitate than it is for me to participate because I'm shy. But I am a participant in Art Cloth Network, which is a group of about 35, and I think they've been together almost 30 years. Like they started out probably with a half dozen or so, but they're 30 to 35 people. And there are a few people in the room tonight that are in Art Cloth Network. And people come from Canada and the United States. And they're very well organized. I can't take any credit for that because I arrived, I just couldn't believe how like well done their bylaws were and all sorts of things.
Wow.
They hire a juror every year. They have a theme, they vote on a theme, and they hire a juror who juries a show. And those artworks as a group are we individually send, but they go to, for 3 years, they travel around the country to different exhibition possibilities. So that has been a really direct benefit from being an Art Cloth Network. The secondary benefit from being an Art Cloth Network is that everybody does something. So in Art Cloth Network, I provide workshops that people have really, I think, have really enjoyed, which are about how to organize your administrative part of your career, or writing resumes, writing artist statements, things like that, in a group. So
Hmm.
everybody brings their work in and we talk about it. And of course, I'm pretty opinionated, so they hear what I have to say. But so that's been a really nice thing
Meryl,
for
let me just
me.
interrupt you. Is that free, or is that do you have to apply to get in? Just for the people who are here and who might be listening to it later. Yeah, what is the deal with that?
Yeah, I don't know if they're accepting new people this year. They generally accept, I'm seeing a nodded head. So they'll accept people, I think, August, September, October, or October, maybe. Anyway, this fall, look up
Yeah.
Art Cloth Network, you'll see a notice on the website. There's a nice
Uh-huh.
website. So our Cloth Network, you apply. You have to be juried in, so you
Mm.
send your best work, and the membership committee will review it, and you'll see if you can get in. There, it's limited. There's
Yeah.
usually only a couple slots. So,
Okay.
but yes, I pay an annual dues. It's less than $200 for my annual dues, and I do pay for shipping. So there's not that there's no expenses, but it's really minimal. The group actually meets once a year somewhere, Western United States, Southern, and then Eastern. I think they kind of rotate.
Hmm.
They were in Boston last April for Gather 2025. So they meet once a year. You're not required to go every time. You're not required to apply to every show, but there is an expectation of involvement, and so you really are on a committee actively doing something that supports the
I just
organization.
want to interject and say that, I've noticed just a flowering of groups online mostly that I've noticed, but also I'm sure people are meeting in person as well. But groups that I'm not aware ever existed before that do this kind of combination, sort of feedback or critique, or the capability of that. I belong to, I was a member of Network, NETVRRVVRK for 3 years, and I just recently stopped. But and that is also you have to pay for membership there, but that is another place kind of like that. Although what you're talking about is also groups that provide residencies and opportunities to show your work, sort of
Mhm.
a full service art experience that for people who are feeling lonely in this career and frustrated and just not clear about what to do or where to go, there are these new kinds of things that are out there to explore that could, really be something to help you navigate. So I
Yeah.
was just gonna, yeah,
And I think pushes your work forward.
and pushes the work forward, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
Crit Lab does Patricia Miranda organizes a show, I think every year to 18 months. And I met a wonderful, lovely collage artist who is also a poet who lives in Macon, Georgia, who was in my group. And she and I are collaborating on a piece for the next Crit Lab show. So
Fabulous.
it's
Yeah.
going to impact my work as well.
So go ahead and talk a little bit about yeah, well, what are you a part of anything else that we should know about?
Yeah, one thing I'm really thrilled to be part of, honored to be part of, is Surface Design Association. I have been on the events committee for a number of years. I've rotated off, and as I said, I think I'll be doing a meetup in the fall. Um, but on through Surface Design Association, I got the opportunity to moderate panel discussions, which I had never done professionally. And I did a few for inside SDA, like they're graduating arts kids graduate from art school. Shouldn't say kids, adults. And then a group of SDA members in Europe. So I moderated they had a show together. I moderated a conversation. I moderated a conversation about Aboriginal artists and art in New Zealand. And then I started doing textile talks, which is something that I think SACWA is like the main Studio Art Code Association is like the main host for textile talks, but um, SDA, Surface Design Association, rotates in like every 8 weeks or so. And I had incredible opportunities there to indulge in research, which I love, researching artists and learning about artists, and then and then asking them the questions I wanted to ask them, which are for me are frequently conceptual rather than technique. So I feel like that really broadened my perspective on art, this more of a worldwide perspective. So Surface Design Association has been great. Right now, I'm in Textile Study Group of New York. I was in before and used to go to meetings in New York occasionally. Took the pandemic off, and I've just reconnected now. And I'm a little bit of a lurker right now. until I really see a way that I can jump in. I'm hoping I'll be able to find a way in. And then I have a local crit group. I think we've talked about this, Adria, that,
Yes.
I tried for many years to find a group of artists that I felt could actually provide critique in a way that was constructive, and helpful, caring, sensitive, perceptive, and people who I respected their opinions. And I can see someone is here right now that's in that group. So two people actually. So that has only happened probably for the last, that started during COVID. So that's been happening since COVID, and that's been a really lovely thing. But if you have gotten anyone here, if you've gotten frustrated trying to put together critique, I tried a number of different experiences before I have managed to put together this group. And it took take myself and two other artists sitting down and hammering out, what do we want? What do we want in the people that are going to be in this group? What behaviors do we want to see? How often do we want to meet? Really hammering it out. And occasionally that kind of thing gets adjusted within the group.
That's all. It's hard. It's very tricky. Merill and I were talking about this before, because critiquing in a way, you really can shut somebody down so easily and not even realize it. But there really is a kind of art to it. And yeah, so it may take a while to find the person or the people that, you feel that, you all understand the pitfalls of how you speak about each other's work, right?
Yes, and I think also just that the conversation is worthwhile. So
Yeah.
sometimes people are sensitive. You need to have someone there that's nice, that will follow up on, a hard remark with something that's positive, but
Right.
but
Yeah.
also just worthwhile. So
Yeah.
I certainly, listened to critique, or, observed critique that just goes on and on and on down a rabbit hole without it ever really, because we all bring so much baggage to what we're seeing. And so it can just be about the person speaking and not really constructive about your work or the other person's work, or yeah. So I think that's a really tricky one. I'd be curious to how many people here have a really effective crit group. I think it's hard. But so then, I mean, I think that's a good, set to describe.
And then, to go back to the one that we had, which lasted a good 7 years, it really was more help, help each other. It wasn't critique. It really was basically, we were learning together, how to do certain things that we didn't know how to do business wise, and also sort of well, more than administrative, applying for things and just the kind of the basics. I would say that network takes that on steroids to a great extent and introduces you to artists that are all over the world that have all done different things. And so, it is a little overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people because there's so many people, there's so many possibilities. But there's an online function. It kind of works like Facebook, where everybody who is part of network can post questions, and then you can get answers from people who, about certain techniques or certain products, or where to get this or where to get that, and or let me see how you did your winning application for the Guggenheim grant. It's that kind of thing that I've found incredibly helpful. So it kind of depends on what sort of things you need in your life at the certain moment.
Well,
Um,
yes, I do think Crit Lab is much more about really thinking through what your work is saying. And,
yeah,
it's not about, I mean, certainly you can talk about things you're applying to, and you can share, descriptions of your work that you're using for applications, but it's just so intellectually deep to be
yeah,
in Crit Lab. And
they're very different. Exactly, they're
yeah,
completely different
yeah.
that way.
Right. And I think my work has improved, greatly improved. And also how I talk about my work has greatly improved being in that environment. for a semester every so often. It sort of brings me back on track to the things that I think are important, and it helps me identify them and articulate them.
Right. And I think what I wanted you to talk about too are some of the things to keep in mind,
Mhm.
advice in terms of networking and expectations in groups, and how to really have a very successful uh, kind of group experience.
Right, right. I think that is really tough. The coaching group followed sort of these theories about organization where it's called something like forming, norming, figuring out your norms, conforming. Then, and then we got to a point where after 7 years, I don't know if you remember this, Adria, but I had us do a whole brainstorm for a whole meeting
Yeah.
because we got to this point where we were conforming to learning and we had taught each other so much, we were a little bit not sure what to do next. So, and we had two group exhibitions, specifically thematically one was about a room of your own, about artist studios. So the group was very appropriate for that twice,
Yeah.
two different exhibitions, but it basically didn't have enough to keep going. And that's not an unhealthy thing. That's not some people were sad and some people were relieved to be freed up of the commitment. I would personally was ready to go on to the next idea. You can have a great idea and a great group. Don't let it break your heart if it doesn't live forever. There are times when groups, go through their life. So that's one thing I would say. Some of the advice that I got that I really enjoy is networking is giving first,
Yes.
not getting. Getting is second.
Exactly.
So
That's so important. And that's, yeah, underline
yeah.
that.
And so yes, underline that.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I would say is say out loud the expectations. So
Hmm.
sometimes if I have time, I have a group actually brainstorm them. If not, then I set it out there. What are the norms of behavior that we expect? Non-compete? Do we share, that art consultant's name and contact information? Like how intimate is it going to be? Are we
Mm,
giving each other honest feedback? All kinds of like whatever it is that you want out of your group. I would say one of the things that's the hardest is that sometimes people really disappoint you, and
mm.
sometimes you're disappointing to others. So, one thing that I always keep in mind is 1 in 10 people is going to be unhappy with you. So, that's okay. If you actually are in a group and only one is disappointed in you, you should really feel good about yourself. Don't let that disappointment in you really take your emotions down. The other thing that I have to constantly remind myself is that I'm a grown up and everyone in the group is a grown up and they need to manage their feelings as a grown up.
Mm.
You do not have to take on the emotional life of the people that are in your group. You can support them without taking it on. I would say too that it's really important that you exhibit and act on your ability to care for others. If you model caring for others, others will care for you and each other. So that's just, I think that's it. I mean, those are the things that I think are the most important.
Yeah, that's what those are wonderful. And they're not things that everybody knows. So it's really lovely to hear this and to think about them. Uh, and I
So,
think I would say that the benefits of belonging to a group, for these things definitely outweighs any of the negative things that have happened.
yeah,
Very few, things for me actually. Um,
yeah. And I would say, I mean, even now today, I'm finding that contacts and friendships I made in groups 20 years ago, like Adria, are very helpful today. So it just builds. It just builds and builds and builds. I just put into the chat the four that I talked about.
Oh,
I
that's
put
great.
links to the
Thank
Grit
you.
Lab and SDA and Art Cloth Network and Textile Study Group of New York. Um, and I've shared sort of the advice that I got, but I imagine there are questions that people have.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me see what's in the chat. Hold on a second. I'm gonna find this. Um, Meryl, do you want to go to the chat and
I'm in
see?
the chat
Okay, go ahead
and
and
um, so I see something from, is it Iona or Ilona Anderson?
Alona.
Uh, and
Ilona.
um,
Ilona.
mm, so you have experienced when you were in South Africa, you experienced an artist
Right.
friend.
We created it ourselves because we wanted to support each other.
Mm-hmm.
Called it the Success Group, and we're all Buddhist artists. We just happened to be Buddhists and friends, and that was the basis of our getting together. And we would buddy up with each other and like make sure we did the things that were scary to us, like call a curator or whatever the issue was that we chose to do. And we would like if we met every 3 weeks, we'd call, in the middle of the 3 weeks
Yes.
and talk and say, "Have you done X?" And you say, "Oh no, I'll do it tomorrow" or something. And so we got a lot done. And it was great. It was really helpful. And it's
Yeah, I
like
think
a,
that's a
a
great.
mini version of network, I think. Networks like
Yeah.
on steroids, and that was just like us helping each other. So
Yep.
It sounds like an accountability group,
it's like that. It is
and
that good
I
quality.
do I do find in groups that some people are comfortable talking in front of the whole group, and some people are more comfortable talking one to one or one to two.
Yeah.
So I always try when I have a group or a class or whatever, I always try to break out into smaller groups of one or two together. It's hard to share your artist statement to an entire big group, but it's okay to talk to one other person about it. So I think that, and I think that's a great way to do the in-between meetings. So set up a buddy system so that in between the meetings, there's someone to check in with. Um, and oh shoot, I just lost my train of
No,
thought.
you were, that's so great, Meryl, that you said that because there is a dynamic that happens. Like, our group of whatever it was, 12, 13 people felt big.
Mm-hmm.
A group that I'm in now of four felt small, feels small and very intimate, and I have no problem. But yeah, there really is a difference, and some people feel it more than others. So it's just, yeah, I think you can certainly make changes or add things to it so people do feel more comfortable sharing. Yeah,
Yeah. And I do think that personal call or email or Zoom or whatever in the midpoint, I would think, oh, that's tomorrow. I have to do this today. It
yeah,
really
Actually,
wasn't, it didn't feel bad. It was just a great line in the sand. So, because our lives are ridiculously busy. So I
yeah.
think it's nice to have that check-in. And I think that our cloth network people could talk about how that worked for them, because they do that. They have check-ins.
hmm Yeah, the check-ins are, we started each meeting with a check-in, which is just to kind of have that piece of sort of emotional, where are you, how are you feeling, so that, you just don't all sit down at a meeting and start in with whatever, when someone's just, their cat just died or something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I learned from you some really great skills, uh, that have helped me in other kinds of situations in my life, like teaching, for example.
Oh, good.
So I think, teaching could be just a really big kind of a coaching group.
Yeah.
Yeah. What other
I,
questions do people have?
I think um, I wanted to, I just wanted to also go back to Ms. Anderson and say that I think because you are all Buddhists, it means that there's certain expectations of beliefs. And I think that helps. I think that, you're able to talk about sort of the values behind Buddhism, and it can help guide.
we
All
were
right,
also
so
all
Martha.
Sorry,
Martha
let me say
Keller.
this one thing. We're
Oh,
also friends. So we had a real sense of camaraderie and wanting to help each other. And that was huge, that, I mean, we're still friends like whatever, 30 or 40 years later, kind of thing.
yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring up that when you are going to form a group or be in a group, the level of social expectation versus collegial expectation, I think is important to identify for yourself. Like what is this group about? Do I feel like I need more social engagement, or do I feel like I really need to talk about work and career? Those are things that you can form a group that starts out collegial, and you can grow to love each other and understand each other's lives and care about each other. Or you can start out as friends and you can grow to hold each other accountable for your career development. But that's something that I think I have always sort of juggled and struggled with because I'm an introvert, how much I'm able to conform to the social expectations. Um, but now I'm going to talk. Martha Heller has written in about the Surface Design Association, and is talking about the meetups that they organize online for artists with a common interest, and it's led by one artist. And yes, Martha, that's what I think I'm doing one in the fall. There'll be all different kinds of meetups. There are probably meetups meeting right now. Sometimes they're the Martha attended one that was around artists that were interested in botanical colorants and fiber art, and so they have continued to meet, and there are artists that are both in the U.S. and around the country. Then Virginia has asked, do you think being a member of a cooperative gallery brings many of these benefits as well? Now, that's a great question for Adria because I do not belong to a cooperative gallery. I have thought about it many times and it hasn't happened
Yeah.
yet. I
Well,
haven't.
I've been part of two cooperative galleries, Bromfield Gallery and also Boston Sculptors Gallery. Interestingly, neither of them ended up being situations where we particularly helped each other move forward in their career. I don't know why, and maybe it just depends on the cohort that you happen to be in. But that didn't happen with mine. We were friends, and some people, we just because people are all over the place and do have to come together for meetings, and everybody's so rushed. It's lovely to meet people that way, but it wasn't the same for me as the coaching group, not at all.
I do think, I mean, and I've talked to people actually about applying, and I've talked to people who've done it. And it seems to me that you really need to know why you're going into a cooperative gallery. You have to be there every month for meetings, and you have to be there every month to do your turn sitting in the gallery or
Yeah,
something along those lines. There's a certain amount of time commitment. And then usually people sit on a committee, just like
right.
our cloth network. You sit on a committee. I'm in community
You
development.
can. And
So,
and the other thing that happens is, and you do get to see how, the back end of how a gallery works, even though it is cooperative. You still learn a ton about it, and I think that's where my skill set was in learning, was how it all worked. And yeah, but I think you're right about, there really is a big difference between a cooperative gallery and a commercial gallery. And they both are good, and they both have different strengths and weaknesses. So yeah,
yeah. And I think like most of the cooperative galleries have an administrator of some
yeah,
sort,
most
either a
of them do.
director or a head of marketing, or I know there are people in the room that have held that job. And that's also a way to learn the back end of the gallery. Learn how to write a press release, learn how to write a write-up about the exhibition. And also I would think the exposure to the work. So you're
Hmm.
constantly being exposed to work of other artists that are either working in a completely different medium or working on the same vein, the same themes or whatever. So I would think that part would be good. I thought about doing it because I live way out in Concord, in West Concord. And I thought, well, I should join one of the cooperative galleries in Boston, just
Yeah,
to broaden my circle. But my circle is sort of going somewhere else. So I'm not necessarily as connected to Boston as I could be, but I'm not sure that's where I need to connect. So I think everybody has to go through that. Oh, I see.
exactly. And Joan was asking too, did we attend the monthly meetings? I've heard that going to the openings especially useful for getting to know the community at large. Did that not help you? Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, definitely opens your network, and you do get to meet artists in your area for sure. And you often do end up going to openings more often certainly than you would normally. I mean, I think all of that is good. And I think artists really, benefit from being social a bit if you can stand it. It's a good thing if you can. Um, you've been
Joan?
struggling as well to thinking about this next move. Yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah, I think that's a good question too, Adria. That she's losing her studio.
yeah.
She and is being, in a community gallery, a place where she would feel like she could cross-pollinate and, more readily than just working at home.
Well, again, I think it depends on the. No, yeah, and Alona says not necessarily. I would agree. Not necessarily, but possibly. And I think it really is about connecting with that particular cohort of that particular year that you're joined into the group. But it's certainly better, and I think that's it's not quite the same. You're not. I don't think it's just because of the nature of having you're there because you want your work out in the world and to sell it and hopefully and then do shows and things like that. I think there's a little bit of maybe a competitive spirit that can take over that might get in the way of some of that. But again, it depends on who. So it's not a bad thing. And Joan, if I were you, I'd check into it. Can't hurt.
I think the competitive thing is a whole topic in itself.
Yes, it is.
I
It
think
is. And
I from left over from when I was in the design world, which is not as nice as the art world. I mean, very competitive. But I always thought there's enough work to go around. I just
Mm,
tell myself there's plenty of work to go around. There's plenty of work to go around. I think you have to kind of live through your artist life, even though it's intensely competitive. The resources are intensely competed for. Your spot in a show is intensely competed for. I think you have to tell yourself, look at the cup half full, that there's plenty to go around. There's plenty to go around because otherwise you just, it can really eat you alive.
it's absolutely.
One of the other things I think, Adria, that you and I do, and it's very hard for me because I am shy to ask anyone to come over, but we actually visit other artists' studios and ask artists to visit our studios. And that's really tough. But I have found the feedback that I get one-on-one from an artist that I know their work, I respect their work, or whatever. That kind of dialogue and conversation is the most productive. Not, I didn't have as many productive conversations in the artist building I was in as I do any one of these one conversations. I walk away with something that's of value. Um, so Joan, I would think about what it is that you really want. If you really want to exhibit, then yes, I would say a collaborative gallery because you will be scheduled in. And the people I know that have been in Boston Sculptors Gallery, and there's someone here tonight was in for a long time. Um, she's now freed up. She's a free agent, but the schedule I've noticed in my colleagues that are in the cooperative galleries, the schedule that you're going to show after 2.5 years or whatever it is, really keeps them on track. It's
Yeah.
whereas I can like decide that I'm going to run a fiber arts festival and get completely derailed for a couple of years because no one's expecting me to show up with
Right.
a gallery full of work. So
But
you
Meryl,
decide.
actually, because we're going to close up fairly soon, I wanted to make sure to ask you a little bit about Gather because that was such an amazing undertaking, and I don't know if everybody here knows about it. But can you, in a nutshell, and then I'd love to know why you did
I'll tell
it.
you first why I did it
Okay.
because I really wanted to give back to a community and a profession and an area that I feel has given me so much. And to me, it's civic. Just like I vote or I go to town meeting in my town or whatever, that's a civic, act. I felt like organizing Gather was a civic act, especially at these times when I'm just so sad about what's happening in our country. So, so Gather, it actually took 3 years to sort of build gather and I just had this idea that there's textile arts. LA does like a week, and Miami does like a week. Textile arts, Miami does. New York actually has the month of September. In the month of September, if you're going to New York and you want to see interesting exhibitions, you go to the Textile New York site, and they have the listing of everything that's happening in New York that's related to soft materials of any kind. So I was like, why doesn't Boston have that? We're like
Mm.
perfect area to do that. So I talked to someone I really respect, who I've become friendly with, who's a director of a museum, and I said, I'm going to describe this thing, and you tell me if I'm insane or and she said, go for it. You definitely should go for it. We could definitely use that. So it just built, I built, I started out with 4 or 5 what I called big box stores, like I got my 4 in. So I had PBD Essex, I had Danforth Museum, I had these, a set that would hold events. And from there, and I asked a group of 7 people. One person really I just used as an advisor, but the other 6 we met almost monthly, that would be willing to put their volunteer efforts into this. That like me felt like this was a thing to do together and to give back to our community. So from there, and then I met this amazing woman who knew how to do administrative tasks that I didn't know how to do, who had just moved here and who didn't know a lot of people and who said, "Oh, do you need some help in your studio?" I'm like, "No, but I sure need some help with Gather." So Gather grew to 100 events that
Mm.
happened, in about we were talking about it as a month-long sort of festival, but it really stretched over many months because a lot of shows went up early and then stayed up after. So there were 100 events of all sorts. So we started with big box, then we went to, some galleries, we went to organizations, then we went to teachers so we could list their classes and so forth. And it's a site, it's actually, I believe, still up on the website. Their website is still up. Our website is still up. Wrote a grant. I needed an angel investor. One of the people in my group knew someone who would give us $1,000 because that's what I needed in order for Fractured Atlas to actually allow us to apply for a grant.
Mm.
That's who was our fiscal sponsor. So we found a fiscal sponsor. I mean, was quite a bit of work, press releases and descriptions that went out. And it got so big so fast that there's a lot of things that really, we didn't really necessarily control because I really felt like we shouldn't say no to anyone. But
Oh gosh.
so yeah, but so it was an amazing thing. We kicked it off with an all-day symposium, and that I really benefited, as I was saying earlier, by working with the SDA, also with Crit Lab, in out of New York. I had a lot on my mind that I really wanted us to have a symposium that had some meat to it, and so we did have an all-day symposium. And we just had we just had an amazing experience. People were so happy to be in the room. Panelists came up from New York and were local, and yeah, it was really amazing. It was
Yeah,
amazing.
and you must have learned so much too.
I did. It was interesting. I think people think that, oh, Meryl did that to make contacts for her own career, but that was never on my mind, and it hasn't happened by accident afterward.
Okay.
So, like, I did not do it for my career. I really
Yeah.
honestly did it because I think it's an amazing thing to do. There are people that are considering doing it again.
Ah,
I don't want to lead it. I really,
yeah,
really took time off from the studio to do it. So
sure.
I don't want to lead it. But I will tell you, especially those of you who are local, right now I have a a description in to one of the universities around here to do an all-day symposium
Oh my God.
on women leadership in the arts here, and then artists who take the reins and who lead their career, or like this,
Mm.
lead other artists. So that's what I'm hoping to do in January or February. I think probably February. So stay tuned.
All
Follow
right, that sounds
follow me
great.
on Instagram. I'll post it on Instagram.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, Meryl, is there anybody else that sent you a question in chat?
Okay, let me see.
Have anybody else?
I mean, I don't want to miss anyone, so I'm just going to take a minute to read it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So some people are weighing in on the co-ops. People read the chat if you want. They're weighing in on whether they like the co-ops or not. Um, Someone went to the Gather Symposium, says it's fantastic. Thank you, Virginia. Oh, you never thought I was doing it for my career. Smart, because I wasn't. I really
Yeah.
wasn't.
I mean, the
All
thing
right.
is that when you reach out, it's never a bad thing. Some of this
Mm,
hard work, even though it's really, dreadful. Like I curated a show, and that was so much work, but it was a joy, too. And I think
yeah.
that's why we do these things, because we are social beings, and sometimes it's a lot easier to make those connections, when it is in the service of a show or a symposium or something like that, than it is just at a cocktail party or an opening where you don't even know the person that's next to you. So, I would say that there's a good reason to reach out and start an accountability group or start a critique group, or, step forward to do something that is a little bit more. People want to be asked, I think, and people really want these opportunities. It's just that a lot of people can't make it happen for a variety of reasons. So when you do, I think people are grateful,
I agree.
you know.
Absolutely.
So
If you want a group, if you want a gathering, you have to go out and ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't
exactly.
have to know everything about how to
No,
make that group work. You
not at
use
all.
the wisdom in the room. I'm always talking about the wisdom in the room. Use the wisdom in the room. Yeah.
I
And
love that
good luck,
expression.
everyone. Good luck,
Yeah.
everyone.
Mariel, this has been so great. Thank you so much for joining me. My
Oh,
little
thank you for having me,
show
Adrian.
here.
I was thrilled to
And
be asked.
yeah,
Thank
oh well, I'm so grateful, and so in my admiration of you, and what you've done for, especially for the gather thing and everything else. But we have recorded this, so I'm going to make it available to people to watch at any time, because I think that this kind of conversation will really, really help people. All
thank you.
right, everybody, thank you guys
Thank
so
you,
much for
everyone.
joining
Thank
us,
you.
and
Thank you.
Thanks,
yeah.
Marilyn.
Keep posted for the next one. I'll let you know. I have no ideas. By the way, if you have ideas, let me know what you'd like me to talk to find someone to talk about.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye, everybody. Thanks again.